This is NAB Show Live, produced by Broadcast Beat.
Welcome back to NAB Live, presented by Broadcast Beat. We're going to be talking about dailies today, the most important part, or a very important part of the production process, and something that's really been changing a lot. And we have two experts on hand to discuss it. Directly to my right is Randy Reck, Director of Product Development at MTI Film. And next to him, Ian McNenny, who is a product specialist also at MTI. So why don't we start off a little bit? MTI produces, creates products, and has a post facility, correct?
We do. We're both a post-production house and a software development company. So we sort of parlay the post-production side. We use some of our people as guinea pigs in our software side. We provide software that does both film restoration and dailies, IMF creation, DCPs. We use this software internally and continually develop it with a pretty big staff of developers. And we also sell it. So it's kind of best of both worlds.
So I'm curious, do you beta test any of these products in your post-production side?
Every day.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
We do. I mean, we go through builds daily just to constantly be keeping everything up to update, bug fixes, but also adding all the different features and new things to expand the product. So we definitely still have a job to do as far as dailies go every day in our facility, and we want to make sure that we test each new version in a real world environment.
I mean, it seems like it would be a tremendous advantage to beta test something in your own facility as opposed to a facility in Kansas or New York City.
True. I mean, we don't only beta test in our own facility. We have a few different productions that are going on around the country that use Cortex on set to do their dailies, and we're in constant contact with those operators every day. Any sort of bugs or feature requests they have, we try and listen closely to them on a daily basis as well.
So Cortex is the dailies product, correct?
It is.
Why don't you give our viewers a little tour of what Cortex does, what makes it the distinctive product that it is?
Sure. So Cortex is the modern rendition of our very early product. We started with a product called Control Dailies, which was the very first software file-based daily system in existence. It evolved into the latest product, Cortex, and at its base is a complete dailies system that does everything that you would need from set to screen, ingest, audio sync, transcoding, color correction, and ultimately rendering out. But that has been kind of a stable product for us for quite some time. Recently, we've added things like Dolby Vision metadata support for the HDR world, as well as HDR10 support.
Let's talk about HDR. I mean, that is, that's been a big buzz for some time now, and the buzz is even greater at this show. Yeah. I know just before we arrived, Samsung announced their version, which I understand is kind of 10 plus.
Right,
HDR 10 plus.
right.
But how many versions of HDR are we talking about? How many do you support?
You name it. Primarily Dolby Vision and HDR10, but we were supporting everything really that comes at us. And we're kind of tackling this in a new way. People see something like Dolby Vision metadata coming with the HDR master and wondering what to do with it after the edit is done. It's time to deliver, but there may be some changes that need to get done. We've come up with a visual way of actually seeing the metadata and editing the metadata in sort of a natural editor environment that really makes HDR finishing quite easy.
Well, that's interesting. Ian, you've worked with this part of it, I take it.
I have. It's something that, especially over the last few weeks, has really come together and is an impressive product. Is simply because with very little training and very little explanation of how to work with this metadata, I was able to sit down and recognize how to utilize the system and the edit tool to do what I wanted to do, because we treat it as though it's a piece of media in and of itself.
Well, explain it to me. I know what metadata is, and I know what editing is, but I'm not sure I understand why we would want to edit metadata.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a big deal, especially on the Dolby Vision side, where you might have an HDR master created, color corrected, ready to go. The standard dynamic range version essentially comes with one file in the Dolby Vision scheme, so that the metadata that comes with the HDR file defines what the standard dynamic range, the SDR output will be. What we have found is at the finishing stage, there's often questions if I have to add 2 seconds of black, if I need a bumper, a slate. Do I have to then take that and go all the way back to a color suite and do HDR mastering again, and then go all the way back to editing or finishing and deliver it, package it? In our case, you don't have to do that. You're there, you've got an HDR package almost ready to deliver for Dolby Vision, minus 1 or 2 changes. Visually, you just tweak it, re-export the metadata if needed, package it up and send it on. There's there's no going back to the beginning necessary.
That sounds really, I mean, Ian, talk about that. I mean, you're the one that's doing this hands-on.
Right.
Can you, from your point of view, what is it like being the operator and dealing with editing metadata?
Well, yeah, like I mentioned, I didn't really have to be walked through the process. So I just was able to take a piece of metadata, which essentially is an XML file that comes in, and drop it onto our timeline on top of the video media that we're applying the metadata to. And Cortex treats it as though it's a chunk of media on the timeline on a track right above the video media, just like you'd usually expect. So once I'm in there and I've got the metadata laid out and I've got our cuts and breaks in there so that I know which segments metadata belongs with the video, I'm able to make trims and extend things if there's something that's been mistimed, copy metadata from one section and paste it onto another section if there has been a mistake made, and like to Randy's point, it goes a step farther in allowing us to be able to fix that rather than have to go to the more expensive systems to get them to tweak just one tiny little thing.
So this sounds like you're saving, in your estimation, how much time are you saving by being able to do this in the system?
Potentially days, I would say.
Wow.
I mean, just with a longer piece, I mean, it costs a lot of money to go back to some of these color correctors and book that time, and so many different shows and whatnot are in there in any given day. You may or may not be able to do it today or tomorrow,
And then what happens at the end with the metadata? Is it archived with the media? How does that work?
Yeah, the metadata is essentially married to the delivery package. In the case of Dolby Vision, it's an MXF file that carries the metadata in an IMF-ish package, or IM-fish, as some people like to say. And MTI Film partnered with Dolby more than 2 years ago with this in mind, the idea that we could use our existing tool, Cortex, add features to it to enhance and speed up the delivery of Dolby Vision packages with the HDR metadata inside it.
Well, that sounds like an incentive to use the Dolby Vision then.
It does.
Right?
It certainly is, it's an easy way to go. HDR10 would be another format that we support, and we have similar tools. There are different challenges, obviously.
Let's talk about the challenges for other forms of HDR, which I imagine you run into in the dailies all the time, I'm guessing.
We do. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I mean, it's the HDR. I mean, it's something that is thought of from the get-go.
Right.
But typically it's something, as far as I understand, it's done at a much later part in the process, and our integration of it into Cortex is a lot of. I guess it's on a familiar product. It's on a familiar platform. If you've brought in your media through Cortex and done your dailies through Cortex, the media that you need is already there in Cortex's database, and you don't have to go and ingest the media into a different system in order to do this Dolby Vision metadata editing. It's already there. All you need is your XML for your cut, and Cortex assembles everything for you, and you're ready to rock and roll with your metadata.
And Cortex supports ACES color workflow.
Right, I was just going to ask you about ACES. Do you have a lot of customers coming to you wanting to adhere to the ACES workflow?
More and more. And with HDR being used on set now, it becomes a handy way of dealing with the extended dynamic range. In addition to considerations on set for avoiding clipping and crushing, and everybody's doing this kind of new.
It's the Wild West, isn't it?
It is.
It's the Wild West. Why don't you briefly describe what ACES is? I think many people know, but probably not everybody.
Okay, sure. Yeah, ACES is a end-to-end color pipeline definition that
was introduced by the Academy of Motion Picture.
Right. And we're an ACES partner. It defines color space all the way through the process from going from a camera format into a color corrector or transcoder and all the way out to a delivery or to a display device. And before ACES came along, each facility would have a color scientist figure out what was best for all of these things.
And facilities would have their secret sauce.
Sure.
Right?
And ACES successfully standardized things like the color space coming in from all of these different cameras in a input display transform, which essentially gets any camera, any color space into a playing field that's equivalent across cameras, and then you can do accurate color correction.
And Ian, does this impact the end user, or is it invisible to the end user?
It does. We have built in all of the IDTs and ODTs for ACES, and those get applied pretty quickly on in the process. So we apply those transforms, and then do Daly's color, and then at a later point are able to deliver these pieces of media in a color space that's going to play nice in the ACES world.
And ACES being a floating point in the middle of the pipeline supports HDR kind of naturally, the extended dynamic range of HDR.
And you've been an ACES supporter for quite a while, haven't you? When did you join? When did you hop on the ACES bandwagon?
Early on. Before ACES 1.0 was out.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you were early adopters.
Sure.
And I think at that time, it's been a little hard for ACES to gain traction. Would you agree with that, or?
I think so. I think there are a variety of factors. In some cases, facilities like to have their secret sauce as far as color goes.
You're just like manufacturers like
Sure.
black boxes,
Of course,
right?
Sure.
Everybody wanted to have their secret sauce, but you don't play well with others if you have secret
Right,
sauce.
but I think from a studio or broadcaster perspective, it would be really nice to have everyone play nicely together, so that one facility's color could just translate to another's, and we're all speaking the same color language from beginning to end.
So you feel now, do you see, Ian, both of you, do you see the industry or the other facilities wanting to adopt this because of HDR? Is HDR playing a role in people saying, hey, we better play well together? What do you think?
Yeah, I think HDR has accelerated the ACES conversation, because all of a sudden, if you're just working in a 10-bit DPX file, it's not enough, not for HDR. So then you say, well, what's beyond that?
Right.
And more bits, and who's got a handle on that? Well, ACES
does. I know one of the, I don't know how much this impacts you, but I know one of the concerns around HDR is the fact that there's all these different systems that are not compatible. And so, you buy a TV set with one version of HDR and you may not be able to actually get the HDR programming from another system.
Right.
How does that impact you in terms of dailies? Because people are watching with all different kinds of devices, aren't they?
Sure.
That's true. I guess ideally at that point when things like incompatibility of different devices and what to do about the wide range of things that are out there, hopefully you're well out of the dailies world by that point, as far as prepping all the footage. But again, having it all in Cortex and being able to go through everything in Cortex, you hopefully are able to do the things that you need to do in order to make it as widely acceptable as possible, or easily. Well,
you know how the old thing of directors that would want a VHS and they'd go back to their hotel room and stick it in the player,
right,
for a TV that hadn't been adjusted in forever, and they hate the color,
yeah,
because they're not seeing the real thing. Do you see kind of scenarios with that if somebody wants to watch it on their phone or their laptop or what have you?
Yeah, it's I think still early days on set as far as monitoring goes.
Let's talk about monitoring a little bit. What are people doing for monitoring?
Yeah, there are a variety of HDR ways to monitor on set. For the most part, in the productions that we've worked with, the HDR decisions have been largely made later on in the mastering environment, where there's a proper HDR.
Yeah, that's been my understanding. Also, Amazon does that, I believe, right?
Yeah. So in the best case, you're not really setting a look that's done with the same way that you might have done in this SDR world, because the range is so great. So on set, really you're just preserving the high end and the low end, and if you've done that, you've done your job. And the HDR colorist farther down the pipeline is really going to then take off. So it's a learning experience for everyone, all of us.
And what about 4K? I mean, I know we focused a lot on HDR, but 4K is here, right?
Yeah.
I mean, is all the content that you're dealing with pretty much 4K now?
A good chunk of it, yes. We've got maybe 1 or 2 shows that still do HD material, but most everything has gone 4K and above. Yeah, I mean, we have a few shows that shoot 5 and 6K, and then obviously things get transcoded down, but they like the flexibility of the additional size and everything like that. So it has definitely taken a jump as far as the size of the media, as well as the size of storage required per episode.
Well, and that's the issue when it comes down to dailies. I think we were talking a bit yesterday about, you need a pretty fat pipe for 4K and HDR and everything else. Is that problematic with dailies where they don't have the internet that's fast enough? The big enough pipe?
It presents a challenge, I think, and some of it depends on where the production is shooting and what kind of an internet connection is there. What we see is that dailies are often done in HD for a variety of reasons, and not UHD.
Right.
And
UHD meaning Ultra HD.
Right. Yeah. Almost 4K, 3840, 2160. So that's kind of a good balance, because in a HD resolution, you can get the same color decisions made. The editorial media is smaller, easier to get from the dailies location, whether it's near set dailies or in facility, to the editorial department, and cutting is easier in HD still. So
we're back to proxies, essentially.
We are in a way, yeah. Only we've ratcheted up resolutions. So
right. So it's 2 steps forward and half a step back, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe
something like that. Yeah, sure.
Interesting, but I am wondering then if a lot of productions like to shoot in locations that may not at all have high-speed internet.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, that's going to be a problem if you're in a village in Romania, isn't it?
Yeah, and generally that's handled with storing the higher resolution media. Maybe you're not even delivering that every day. Maybe it's once a week, accumulating on a shuttle drive or mobile array.
Right.
The key media typically is the rendered editorial. That has to get to where it's going quickly, and if it's a feature, maybe visual effects, but not as critical as editorial media.
Interesting. So, Ian, or both of you, I understand that the latest version of Cortex also has some tools for the DIT. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Talk about that, please.
Okay. So we've had a free version of Cortex available for a couple of years now that contains the sync tool, the color tool, the copy, and archive tools. Pretty much everything that a typical DIT would need on set to do an offload and sync and make color decisions, and then send that media along with a Cortex manifest over to either the post facility that's actually handling the dailies or near set operator who's got another Cortex system. And then with that Cortex manifest, you're able to recreate the Cortex job that has been on set with the DIT accurately near set or in your facility, so that you can continue to work as seamlessly as possible. So that's been available for a few years, and this year we're releasing DIT Plus, which is $95 a month subscription, or an NAB special. We're doing $595 for the first year, and it contains all of those same tools, the ability to read any camera formats that we can throw at it, as well as render ProRes, DNX, and H.264 media up to HD, up to 1920 by 1080.
Was this something that the DITs were asking for?
It's something that they definitely wanted, something where they could output files. It's having something that is just self-contained is helpful if you have something near set it's just the DIT is handing it off. But if a DIT is needing to actually cook out files for review or for anything like that, having something that can transcode at least to those 3 file formats was something that was exciting to them.
Yeah, we've taken some major features, boiled it down, and then offered it at a very reduced price compared to our Enterprise Edition, knowing that many DITs are, operating as essentially a small contractor on set, and we're giving a nod to that with this pricing. But we're also including things like dead pixel detection, which is our stuck pixel detector.
That's one of your flagship technologies,
right.
isn't it?
In our Enterprise Edition, we actually fix all of the defects, if you wish. But the detection is right there even in our free version, so that a DIT or even a camera assist on set or at a camera rental house could quickly QC their camera outputs before running into trouble where you might get a rejection later on from a particular delivery.
And you're finding that most of these productions do have DITs.
They do.
Yeah, well, that's good to know.
Yeah, typically.
So what does the future hold? I know that we're seeing a couple of companies at NAB 2017 that are talking about dailies in the cloud. Tell me, is that something, what do you see in the future?
We've done some cloud testing for dailies processes. What we found, interestingly, was kind of the way we're doing it now seems to be most efficient. The way we're doing it being generate the dailies, the sync, color correction, transcoding from camera to editorial and review media is as quickly as possible, closest to set as possible, and just get the smaller files wherever they need to go. When we're doing cloud processing, it's a little bit of a different approach where you have to get generally higher resolution media to the cloud. So the question again is, what is your connection out in the desert when you're shooting your production or wherever it may be?
Right. Well, we'll have to wait and see what the future holds. It's great to check in with MTI Film. I know you guys have an amazing, history of being involved in this field. What do you think MTI will seize as the future? If the cloud doesn't seem like it's ready, what do you think that MTI?
Well, I don't know that we're discounting the cloud. We're not putting all of our resources there, seeing it a little bit more efficient dailies, at least elsewhere. We've got some interesting ideas about how to make all of this set to screen faster, cheaper, more efficient. and
all inclusive. That's the thing is Cortex started off, like I said, as a dailies product, but it has definitely expanded past dailies all the way from set to screen, and that's the theme of what we're doing at NAB this year, and it seems to have been at least our driving force over the last few years as to what we're innovating and what we're trying to bring new feature-wise to Cortex.
Right. Very good. Interesting. So, are you going to be having any time to walk around the show and see some of the other products out there?
I hope so. Yeah,
That'd be nice.
Yeah. Well, and what are you interested in? Any products aside from dailies?
Anything HDR is interesting to me,
Yes.
personally and professionally. But we have a software presence in all the major studios right now.
Oh, that's interesting. So you are in all the major studios as
Right.
Okay.
Is any major studio doing their own television dailies has many of our software licenses. So being our core Cortex customers, we listen to them, and their suggestions have us looking in many directions, including packaging, IMF, DCPs, and everything HDR.
Right. I mean, that is something that, it's not really germane exactly to dailies, but the whole idea that this content is going to so many different platforms now at the end.
Yeah, and if a studio has 10 licenses of our software every night, churning out dailies like many of them do, why not use that same software maybe during the day to do IMF packages, HDR processing?
Interesting. What do you think, Ian?
I have used Cortex for a number of years, and I've from being a user to working with MTI as the product specialist, I've seen it go from something that I thought was incredibly powerful for what we were doing there on set to something that literally does take everything from beginning to end.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's very, very interesting, and it's certainly an important part of the workflow pipe, isn't it?
Yes.
Anything else you'd like to add about what MTI is doing here?
Well, we haven't mentioned the other half of our software lineup. I could just briefly say that we've been in the film restoration business for decades. We have DRS Nova that has some new features.
Well, I wish we could get into this because it's really, really interesting, but I want to thank you, Randy and Ian, for coming and talking about MTI's Cortex and dailies, and I'm going to be handing it over live to Ryan.
Oh, stand by.
Okay.
You got it? Hey guys, this is Ryan Salazar. We have Shira Lazar. How you doing, Shira?
I'm so excited to be here.
So, you are the digital evangelist here, right?
Yes, I am. I've been here before in panels. Oh my God, and we're in the studio and we hear ourselves. I'm going to pretend I don't hear this.
So let's talk about the Met Effect. What's the Met Effect?
The Met Effect is the convergence of media, entertainment, and technology. As a digital evangelist, I'm here to evangelize that message, to share it with the world as all these things are coming together. They need to exist together while they're separate. In the past, media, entertainment, technology were looked at as separate industries, separate worlds. Now they need each other.
Right, so why now is this the theme?
Because we're in a time where all those worlds and industries are functioning together and energizing each other, and you look at platforms, whether it be Netflix or Hulu or YouTube, they wouldn't exist without technologists, obviously, but they also wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the storytellers and creators who build communities there. So whereas I think in the past I used to hang out with technologists that are like, oh, you're a creator, like, oh, we're separate, we can't talk. Now it's like we need each other.
Right, so as far as panels go, I'm sure you're involved with many panels here at the show, right?
Yes, they're using and abusing me here. I'm going to be at the America Ferrera luncheon. She's being inducted into the Hall of Fame. We're hosting one together. event.
Yeah,
where
exactly,
together.
yes.
The 360 Met Talks is going to be awesome. We got some great speakers there. We got some shows who are really pushing the boundaries around the Met effect. Brockmire, which started as a Funny or Die clip and now is a series on IFC. We've got The Man in the High Castle, the creators behind Game of Thrones. I mean, some of the big wigs and the shows that I love, I binge on, are here this year.
It's quite amazing, and there's typically about 100,000 people at an NAB show. It's such a crazy, cool event. The technology is awesome. I'm a bit of a social media nut myself, so how did you get started in all this?
Oh my God, I was born with social media in my hand. No. Well, I was a broadcaster, and I came at a time where I didn't really want to do the local TV stations, and I was auditioning and wasn't getting the jobs.
Right.
And social media and digital video was the only way for me to build my craft and work on what I love doing and my passion. Luckily, it wasn't just a launchpad to TV, but it became my niche and it became my career. And now more than ever before, just like the MetaFet, all these worlds are converging. So it's not just about being on TV or traditional and then just being on digital. It's how can we utilize both worlds to build bigger audiences and create more impact.
All right, so from right in front of the Met 360 studio, the heart of the Met Effect, right?
Yes.
Here we are with Shira Lazar. I can't wait to chat with you more this week. Have a great show.
Yes, more to come. Stay tuned.
This is Tammy DeBruns from Master Control at WPLG TV in South Florida. I've been here for 33 years, and you are watching the NAB show live.
Hi, everyone. I'm meteorologist Craig Adams from CBS 6 WRGB TV in Albany, New York, the world's very first television station. You're watching NAB Show Live.
Back to NAB Show Live, presented by Broadcast Beat. We're looking now at the very crucial topic of sound. It's the red-headed stepchild, isn't it? Images get the attention a lot more than audio, and yet audio has been proven again and again and again to, that was what attracted people to HD. It's a crucial part of virtual reality. It's very important. So we're going to talk about this very important topic. I have on directly to my right, Keith Rogers, a re-recording mixer, heading up the creative team at South Lake Audio. And South Lake Audio, I understand, is a union signatory company offering mixing and ADR services in Burbank, and it operates within the parent company, Roundabout Entertainment, correct?
That's correct.
And then next to Keith, I have Paul Rodriguez, who is an executive board member at the MPSE and vice president of South Lake Audio and also vice president of audio services and development at Roundabout, correct?
Correct.
All right.
You did good.
Oh, thank you so much. And I think it behooves me to talk about the fact that MPSE, you had something to do with this, right, Paul, since you're an executive board member, that MPSE and NAB Super Session will take place on Wednesday, 2 to 3, on Sound and Pictures on Star Wars Rogue One in room S222.
And I would encourage everybody to go there. We have the bigger theater this year. For the past four years, we've had we did the last Star Wars in a smaller room, and we could have sold it out 3 times. So who we have are the visual effects supervisors as well as the sound supervisors. So it's a very engaging world of knowing what went into making that movie.
And anybody who saw Rogue One, which I presume is pretty much everybody,
I would think so.
Knows how important the sound was.
George Lucas says sound is 50% of the picture.
It is.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, isn't
Yes.
it? Well, he would put it that way.
Yes.
Okay, sounds good. And I was already in S222, and it's a big room.
Yeah.
So people have no excuse. There's lots of room in there.
You're scaring me now.
So, Paul, let's talk about trends a little bit. I mean, you've been in the audio business for a long time, right? What are the trends what's going on out there? What are the trends that you see?
Well, I think the trends that we see right now are on the audio side, and that's where we live, have a lot to do with distribution. The studio system has changed. It used to be that producers made movies and then they found a way to distribute them. Now distributors are making movies, and they already have the mechanism in which to do it.
Like such as Netflix.
Netflix, Amazon,
Right.
and we do a lot of work for them. But that is the new trend, and there are more players. We are actually doing a show for DirecTV. Who'd have thunk
Wow.
that?
Right.
You know,
Right.
so I mean, you can imagine the Netflix and the Amazon, who have been around for a long time, but now we have new players, and that could
Hulu.
include Hulu and some of the other ones. But the studio system has kind of changed; it's turned around a little bit, and I think that's true of broadcast as well as feature film, and we do both on the sound side.
How does that change with all these new players coming into town?
I think it just means that there's more content, and content is king. It just means that there's more, and for the independent post-production companies like Roundabout, South Lake Audio, is we have access to do more work, and the work is high quality. I mean, you know, when you look at some of the shows like Westworld and
Which we're going to talk about in a bit.
I'll bet you will.
Oh, yeah.
But some of those shows, you know, I mean, it's amazing.
So, in other words, for you, it just means more work than ever before.
A little bit. It's also more competition, you know.
Right.
But you know, you try and go for the high quality stuff, and that's where guys like Keith come in.
And it's interesting because Netflix and Amazon, for example, want the highest quality.
They do.
They want the HDR. They want the 4K.
I mean, we're talking about working with, you know, producers like J.J. Abrams and, you know, Jonah Nolan. I mean,
Right.
this is
Yeah.
stuff to be proud of.
Exactly.
We're happy.
So talk about it. How does that affect your end?
One thing I've noticed on the audio side that's a little different now with, say, a Netflix or, you know, that kind of distributor is a lot of times when we were doing broadcast for television, you'd be on a weekly schedule and you're like mixing a show a few days before it airs on television. And with this Netflix model, or you know, this kind of online model, we tend to mix a whole season before it even airs.
Right, because of the binge factor. Right?
Yeah, and because they release it all at one time.
Yeah.
And it's actually creatively, it gives you feel a little bit more. You're more focused because you're not just trying to get a show done every week. You're actually looking at the creative kind of direction of the sound mix.
I mean, that sounds like it would be a real benefit to be able to do it all at once.
It's fantastic.
Tell me about it.
For me, it's been the best thing for creative mixing because you're not just up against the schedule to get a show done. A lot of times, in that kind of environment, when it's a weekly, you know, network type show, they're chasing visual effects and everything's a rush. It seems like, and in this world, it's in doing a whole season, like say a 10-episode series. You have a little bit more time. You're spending more time with the creative producers and the people, and you're really creating the soundscape, and you have a little bit more interaction. It seems like. So I just find it much more. A much more pleasant and creative environment to work in.
Well, you know, it's interesting because I watch a lot of TV, of course, and I was watching something on one of these non-traditional content creators, and I really noticed the audio. The score was incredible. It did seem like a richer audio experience. Am I making that up, or is that really what's happening?
I don't think you're making it up. What we get in these non-traditional formats is more time. And more time, I mean, you know, traditionally on the network side, we're, you know, 3 days per episode on the stage. You know, Keith gets 6 days for Westworld. Wow. So you get almost twice as much time, and I think that lends to the creative aspect of the show. So these are little movies. We're making
They
movies.
are.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because, you know, in the golden age of Hollywood, post-production had a huge amount of time, and of course that's been totally collapsed.
That's true. Because of technology.
Yes.
Yeah. The technology has changed the way that we work, and not necessarily to the greater good. but we're still, I mean, the opportunity to have choices is still there. So creative choices still exist, and it will be done when it's done.
Right.
And I also think the creative, the people that are involved in broadcast formats now are feature film quality people. I mean, we have high-end, writers, directors, composers, all kinds of people that are in this market now that it used to be a little bit more, divided between features and television. Now you're getting top quality people doing broadcasts.
So tell me a little bit about Southlake. I know that you're kind of like almost like an island in this bigger company that also offers audio services.
Yes.
It seems like it's not a duplication, though. I take it.
Not so much. I mean, we do on the non-union side. We do smaller shows. We do stuff that we've been doing for a long time. A lot of post work, M&Es, stuff like that. We created Southlake to appeal to the higher end, and we.
So you have to be a union signatory.
You do have to be a union signatory for that type of work. So we do a lot of work for the major studios, and it's a separate company, but yet we still all live in the same world. And we just opened a 10,000 square foot facility in Santa Monica.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
nice. I'll have to come visit that.
Yeah, 60,000 square feet in Burbank, 10,000 in Santa Monica.
Wow,
come on out.
I will. I'll definitely come visit. So, talk a little bit about the technology that you're using to. I know we were talking just a bit before we started here about the technology that you're using to achieve these higher end shows.
Yeah, most mixing, I would say, is probably in Pro Tools land. I mean, most mixers for efficiency for time and just the way things are now, where most people are mixing in the Avid Pro Tools environment, and which is fantastic for being able to do a lot in the amount of time that we're given. We're not limited for track space anymore. We're not limited to as much for outboard gear and that kind of thing. It's being in the digital realm, you can set up templates for individual shows that you might have a certain sound design kind of element that you're going for, and you can get into a flow, create a template that gets you up and running really fast. And it's just the thing I like about mixing in the virtual world is the amount of options I can give the client. The client wants. I like to give them as much opportunity to be creative, and in that world, I can give them options. I don't feel like I'm locked into, recording to tape, and in the old days, going to whether it was mag or analog tape, it was a little bit more difficult to present options to a client. Now, it's as easy as having a different session. You can say do different options. You can create a whole nother session, show them a whole different kind of method to a scene, and it's great for being able to give the client a lot of opportunities to be creative.
And are there did Avid unveil any kind of new tools recently for Pro Tools that help that along?
Well, they're always updating. Avid is constantly updating. We just installed an S6 console, two S6s, in one in Santa Monica and one in Burbank, which is their new mixing platform, and it's a great console to work with. There's all kinds of opportunity with that, and then the plugin developers are always coming up with the new reverbs, new EQs and stuff to try. So it's a pretty fun time to be mixing.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
I enjoy it. Yeah.
Are there other trends that, since you're really hands-on in the field, are there other trends in mixing that you're seeing that are influencing your job?
Well, one that we're starting to get into now. I mixed the first season of Westworld.
Yes, we want to talk about that.
And there hasn't been a lot of the new thing we're talking about is Dolby Atmos for home. Dolby's really pushing that going forward, and I'm going to be remixing season 1 in Dolby Atmos for home.
Tell us a little bit about Dolby Atmos first for the.
It's obviously you can in the feature world they've been mixing in Atmos for years. Dolby's really trying to get the home market going. Instead of just a normal 5.1 audio mix, now you can go to Dolby Home Atmos and you have object-based mixing where you have, depending on your system at home or how you do it, you have overhead speakers and maybe depending on there's all kinds of new technology coming out. There's even sound bars that are coming out that have Atmos built into them. There's upwards firing speakers, so you don't have to put speakers in your ceiling at home. I don't know how many.
Are TV set manufacturers going to be putting?
I don't know that, but I would imagine.
You're saying yes, Paul.
I
You
think so? Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, it's coming. It's definitely we're feeling that push, and we're thinking that broadcast, Netflix, Amazon, these kind of companies are about to go Dolby Atmos.
Oh, you think they're going to be adopting that?
Right now they're currently not broadcasting it. It's pretty much just a home video Blu-ray thing you can do. But I think we're right around the corner because of the push for high-end picture. Everything's coming together, and I think.
And of course, Dolby is pushing their HDR.
And the Dolby Vision and that kind of
Which
thing.
is a part of that, too.
Yes.
But also, Starz, I think, has been doing Dolby Atmos for Black Sails and a couple of their other series. And those are flagships. Those are, they're broadcasting that. So how does it become available to the home viewer? Not quite sure yet, but it is a trend, and a trend that we are, totally involved in.
So they're broadcasting it even though people aren't really able to receive it yet.
Not necessarily ready for it,
Well, but
I like that.
It's like HDR too, right? It's the same thing. Well, that's so interesting. Now, you mentioned that, wanted to ask you what set Dolby Atmos apart. You mentioned object-based mixing. Is that correct?
Correct,
yeah. Talk a little bit. What am I going to experience at home if I buy a sound bar?
Well, in a typical, say, 5.1 or 7.1 mix, you have discrete surrounds that are on normally behind you if you're, at home, and you're going to experience a little bit more of a kind of an inclusive kind of mix where you can put atmospheres above you. You can actually take things off of the screen instead of everything kind of coming at you in left, center, right, left surround, right surround, subwoofer. Now you have a front representation where you can take things off of the screen a little bit. So it's very interesting. Like, say, music is typically mainly left, right with surround kind of fields going, but this new Dolby Atmos actually creates this space that is not normally there, where you can say you can go into a